Viewer discretion is advised.
Dr. Morpheus was sure he was awake, but he couldn't move. There was someone in the room with him too. The thing in the corner didn't seem like it was paying any attention to him. It was tall and slender, sort of like a scarecrow. The wide brim of its shaggy hat cast a shadow that completely obscured its head, but Dr. Morpheus could still feel its stare. He tried to scream but couldn't utter a sound. It was just staring out the window. He looked over and saw that there was this dusty field that just stretched off into the horizon. He looked back over and the thing was gone. Then he looked back out the window and there it was, out there in the distance, and way bigger than before. Pitch black arms suddenly grew out of the ground like plants. They tried to claw at the thing, but it just stood there, staring at Dr. Morpheus. He blinked and the field was gone. He could move again. After a while, and after he was sure that he was indeed awake, Dr. Morpheus phoned his colleague, Dr. Isaiah Hostetler. "Yep, I think I'm infected now. It's the same as the case with Jeffrey Kent. Hello everybody, I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you SCP Foundation KETER Class Object SCP-3208. SCP-3208, also known as YKHN, short for You Know His Name, is an infectious disease which initially manifests as a minor headache, followed by neurological degeneration. Over a time period of approximately 3 weeks, the severity of the symptoms will gradually increase until the onset of a full-body paralysis. While neurological symptoms may vary, all sufferers of 3208 will inexplicably experience vivid dreams and hallucinations that include the presence of an entity designated as SCP-3208-1. Appearances of 3208-1 lead to irritability and feelings of paranoia and unease during waking hours independent of the progression of 3208. One of the earliest known infected individuals, Jeffrey Kent, was housed in quarantine facility 904. Dr. Morpheus stepped into the cell and saw Kent sitting in the corner. His face was sallow and eyes unfocused. "Get him up, prop him up in the chair." 2 guards walked over to Kent, lifted him up by his arms with ease, and placed him in the chair. Then, Dr. Morpheus put a mug of hot coffee in front of him. "Drink this. Take your time. Now tell me about your dream." "There's this missing girl in town, and I'm trying to find her in my office. I don't know her at all, but I know that she looks just like my daughter. I try to find her at work, but she's not there. The beeper goes off and the whole office stares at me. I call the number, and the guy on the other end tells me she's down at the docks. I go down there and find this figure with a wide-brimmed hat. She's behind him, so I try to go over, but I can't get any closer. The guy walks into a warehouse with her, so I follow him. There's a dozen bodies hanging from the rafters inside. They're all the same little girl. No blood, no marks. It's like they're sleeping. I hear a noise and I turn around. Somehow, I'm out in a field now. I look up and see the darndest thing. The girls are hanging from the sky now, but they're all awake. They start to scream and claw at the rope, but I can't hear anything. The sun is straight above our heads. Then, a huge shadow comes down over the field, and the man with the wide-brimmed hat is looking down at me. I can't see his face. He grabs all the ropes out of the sky and walks away with them. "No!" I yell with all my might, but they just keep moving further away from me. And then I wake up right as the sun comes back. Years later, Foundation personnel became afflicted with 3208. First, Dr. Morpheus, then Dr. Isaiah Hostetler. The following is the dream log recorded by Hostetler following his infection. I was standing in the parlor of my parents' old home. Perhaps I should have begun by saying that, similar to my dearest colleague, Dr. Morpheus, I couldn't differentiate between reality and dream at the time of occurrence. Anyway, they had some guest over, but I didn't recognize many of the faces. Suddenly, a phone rang. I picked it up, and a voice on the other end said, "Come upstairs." I left the parlor and moved towards the staircase. It ascended into the ceiling with no armrail, and I couldn't see how high it went. I heard the phone ring in the other room, and I was suddenly aware that there weren't any more people around. I looked out a window and saw fields, which I didn't realize was out of the ordinary. I began walking up the staircase, but I couldn't find my footing. I took several steps, and then several more back down, and I began to feel very afraid. I don't know how long I climbed. Eventually, I saw a man in a hat standing next to a telephone, the same phone I answered earlier in the parlor. No, I was back in the parlor. He came up to me and I could see that he looked afraid. "Did you see it?" he asked. When I told him I didn't know what he's talking about, he recoiled. "Blighted seed breeds blighted crop," he said as his eyes grew wide. I should add that at the time of this recording, I'm experiencing the most unbearable headache. I've also noticed that I have become increasingly paranoid lately. The man leaned in, staring into my eyes, and said, "A nightmare festers in the field. Even the reaper fears what is being sown." He handed me a scalpel. "You cannot stop its advance. If it sees you, cut out your eyes. The road through the field will be lined with corpses, but it may give you enough time to escape, by foot or by blade." The room around us was suddenly collapsing. The house was on fire. In the distance, I saw a figure swaying in the field. The man appeared more terrified upon seeing the figure. "It is too late for you. Use the blade. Give the others time. He's coming. He's coming," he said, and disappeared. I heard a long, low sound coming from the field. I turned to look, and I woke up. "Lang, my friend, bring me a glass of water when you come up, would you? And some meds for this headache, too." 15 hours after the recording, Dr. Hostetler was found unresponsive in his room in Site 81, along with a scalpel and a note saying, "I think I understand now. I'm sorry." Subsequently, Dr. Harold Lang was next in line to be infected with 3208 15 years later. After witnessing how Hostetler's mental capabilities have degraded so rapidly over the last decade, it was only a matter of time that I got infected as well. And after last night, there's no questioning it. I know what I saw. I opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was dust. High above me somewhere, I could just hardly make out a light that barely illuminated the world. In the distance, I saw mountains, but through the haze, it was nearly impossible to tell. I kept walking, and after a while the road ended. Dirt covered the road completely. This was when I started to see things laying on the ground. A hat, a ringing cell phone, a diamond ring, some baseball cards, and a pair of pants. I followed this trail of discarded things until I reached a field, one that stretched out before me in a long, unending line. There were crops there, tall stalks of dry things that rustled when the dry wind blew. Somewhere in front of me, I sensed a presence that made my hair stand on end. I walked through the fields for what felt like years. The trail became thicker, and I started to see other things. At first, I thought they were strips of rawhide, like the ones you see for sale at feed stores or cowboy shops. When I picked one up, I saw the faintest coloration of a tattoo etched into it. Dark stretches of blackened blood accompanied each one where the pieces slawed off before coming to rest. I saw hair, fingernails, teeth. It made me sick to my stomach. The haze grew thicker now, and I lost my sense of direction. All around me, I started hearing these voices. Every step I took brought me closer to the source, like I've been drawn to it. Then I saw it, swaying in the wind. It was long and lean, with sackcloth around its body and a wide straw hat on its head. I couldn't make out its features. In one hand, it clutched a thick knot of rope thrown over its shoulder. As my eyes followed the rope, I saw hundreds or thousands of people bundled together like hay, moaning and screaming. Some of them I could see clearly. Men and women and children in their street clothes, their eyes wild in fear. I heard my name and looked up. There was a figure there, one scorched black and rotten, reaching a hand towards me. Its mouth was open and full of dirt and dust. It choked out my name, again and again. I couldn't see its eyes, but I could feel it staring at me. Then it was gone, mixed in with the rest of them as they're dragged across the dirt. I heard my name one more time, and then the sound just became another sound among thousands. As the ground shifted and twisted beneath me, I sank. A pair of glasses were sticking up out of the dirt. It was broken and the frames were bent, but I recognized them instantly. They're Hostetler's. And then I woke up. Or did I? I can no longer tell between realities.